Dear students of class 8A and 8B, today I am going to complete teaching of this lesson, chapter number 11, Revolt of 1857. Points as I written in the board, please look at it. Queen Victoria's proclamation, protection of the traditional rights of the zamindars or landlords, policy of divide and rule, Hindu-Muslim unity, first large-scale uprising. These are the points. First point, Queen Victoria's proclamation. Queen Victoria's proclamation. You know, Queen Victoria was declared the real ruler of India after the suppression of the revolt of 1857. The revolt of 1857, was suppressed by the British. Now how? Because in many places of India where the Sepoys declared war against the British East India Company, during their first half, they were able to defeat British soldiers. But the Britishers did not sit idle. They made all arrangements in bringing reinforcements, whether from India, different places, or from England. And by way of doing it, the British defeated Indian rulers. But there was no unity among them. Unity came on the part of some traditional zamindars who were insulted at the hands of the Britishers, or some peasants and farmers who had faced many, humiliation, who were humiliated at the hands of the Britishers. Only this section of people participated in the Sepoy Mutiny or in the First War of Independence. But the number was very less. A very less number of people participated in the Sepoy Mutiny or the revolt of 1857, and hence the Britishers were able to suppress the revolt. Otherwise, the British would have to face more and more problems while suppressing the revolt of 1857. Queen Victoria's proclamation was declared at the time when India was facing a severe famine. The British did not cooperate with the Indian people by way of providing a certain of money for the famine-affected areas. Far from doing it, they remained busy in celebrating the occasion of Queen Victoria. Since Queen Victoria was declared the ruler of India under the proclamation, it was decided that in order to make the environment, in order to make the situation, make the celebration and good, they spent a lot of money, near about 1 lakh rupees at Delhi Darbar for the celebration of Queen Victoria, or in order to welcome Queen Victoria as the Empress of India. The British government spent a lot of money at Delhi Darbar, but they didn't spend a single amount of money for the famine-affected areas, people of famine-affected areas. So it was a great discontentment of the Indian people. Their all hopes nipped in the bud only because of the maltreatment and humiliation for the Indians by the British government. But during the proclamation, during the time when the British Queen, assured some promises before the people of India, she declared that there would be, she made one matter clear that British government would not pass any act which might become a cause of discontentment among them. On the contrary, the British would be conscious of the interest of the Indian people, so that the Indians must enjoy their life and must extend their cooperation towards the British, and they must not raise hue and cry against any act of British policy. That's why the British would remain conscious from time to time about the Indians satisfaction, and they would not frame any policy, any law which might go against the interest of the Indians. So under such circumstances, the Indians cordially accepted the declaration of Queen Victoria and the promises whatever she made before the Indian people. And next one, protection of the traditional rights of the landlords. The landlords who actually had been demanding for their traditional rights, the Britishers had no interest of it. But this time the Britishers, after the suppression of the revolt of 1857, the Britishers decided to provide that group of landlords and zamindars who did not take part in the revolt of 1857 and remain neutral in order to provide them a good reward. The British this time decided to give them a reward. Since they did not take part in the revolt of 1857, they remained neutral. That's why that group of zamindars were rewarded with many economic benefits. That economic benefits were given to that section of zamindars and landlords who remained neutral during the period of revolt of 1857. And besides, the Britishers also brought some changes so that the rights of the traditional rights of the zamindars must be protected. The British government took gave special attention to that matter, and also indicated that next time onwards the government would accept all responsibilities of Indian traditional rights of the zamindars. And that's why zamindars this time, after the suppression of revolt of 1857, zamindars of all sections, they became happy. Next one, policy of divide and rule. The British realized that the unity between the Hindus and Muslims resulted in the revolt of 1857. That's why the unity between the two communities should be immediately calmed. No unity, and the unity between the two communities of India, Hindu-Muslim unity, might become a cause of rebellion or cause of revolt in the long run. That's why the British this time became very much conscious, and adopted the policy of divide and rule. How? They encouraged the Muslims against the Hindus, and they also encouraged the Hindus against the Muslims. And this provocation temporarily made both of these communities very uncomfortable. That's why the unity which was established between the two communities, temporarily this was broken. Why? because of British policy of divide and rule. And next one, Hindu-Muslim unity. The Hindus realized that the Britishers were deliberately trying to weaken unity between the two communities, the Hindus and Muslims. On the contrary, the Muslims also felt that the Britishers were trying to impose some restrictions on both the two communities. But what was their aim? What was the reason they were doing it so? They were doing it so with a view to weaken the unity between these two communities. That's why some Indian Muslim leaders they decided to take advantages of that situation, because they realized that the country in India was a country of Hindu majority, and one political ground for the Muslims were very important. Establishing one political ground throughout India should be better for them. It should be immediately done. Otherwise, the Hindus would take advantages, and Muslims would have to wait for that fruits. When the fruits would become ripe, and they would be able to eat it. But they do not want to do it so. Hopefully, they are trying to make the matter clear to the Britishers that protecting of Muslim interests would leave an atmosphere of good understanding between the British and the Muslims. If the Muslims, if the British provide them financial advantages or economic concessions, in that case, the Muslims would consider that matter of establishing cordial relationship with the British. So the enmity which was there between the Muslims and the British, that enmity would go forever, and instead of a friendship, a cordial relationship would be established between the British and the Muslims. So the British decided to give some concession to the Muslims in the field of employment, in the field of education, in the field of political influence. Everywhere the British decided to help the Muslims. But the Hindus, they also started fighting against the British for their own rights. And that's why the policy of divide and rule temporarily weakened the unity between the Hindus and Muslims. And next one, first large-scale uprising. It is called the large-scale uprising, or the first war of independence. Why? Because the British, for the first time witnessed a revolt which was done by Indian Sipais. They hardly expected it to be held in India by the Indian Sipais. The Sipais who were neglected by the Britishers, this group of Sipais might raise their voice against the British. They never thought it, they never imagined it. But what they witnessed was a revolt done by Indian Sipais. Against whom? Against them. But during the first half of each and every verse, they proved their proficiency, their technique, their talents, their skills. They were able to defeat the British soldiers, but later on the British would have to defeat them by bringing their reinforcements. And then the British felt that suppressing of that very revolt was a great punishment for them. So, in order to avoid that kind of punishments, and in order to avoid that kind of revolts, the British, the British declared the rule of East India Company null and void, and instead of, they declared the rule of Queen Victoria. And the first war of independence, which was started by Indian Sipais, along with the help of the last Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar II, It created an atmosphere. It gave a complete political land for the Indian Sepahis, and it also established one example that the Indian people could antagonize the British rule. The Indian Sepahis, the Indian people could organize the revolt against the British, and it was not so hard work for them to defeat British soldiers. So these were the important things, encourage the Indian leaders and also strengthen the possibility of starting a new movement against the British in the long run. And as a result, the Indian national movement also started later under the leadership of a number of Indian Congress leaders. Up to this, my dear students, teaching of this lesson is completed, and only one lesson is left from civics. Next day onwards, I shall start teaching of that very lesson as per your syllabus. Up to this, thank you.